I'm here with Tim of Austrian Death Machine to talk about the latest record, Quad Brutal, out February 23rd on Napalm Records. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. How's things going?
It's going good. It's release week, so I'm feeling pretty excited. A little bit of like anxiety, but not the bad kind, you know?
It's been 10 years. It's been a long time since we had some Austrian Death Machine. When did you feel the light bulb went off in your head and it was time to make a fourth record?
Um, well, so because of my past and previous incarceration, all that kind of stuff, which I've addressed many times. But moving forward from that, I felt like I didn't want to just come out like telling jokes, right away. I felt like people might, even though I could mentally be in a great place, people might just interpret that as being very insincere in my path to recovery and all that. So I purposely waited. My goal was to wait until after the second As I Lay Dying record because I felt like the timing would be appropriate then. And then this just second As I Lay Dying record took so long that I sort of reversed the order a little bit. But yeah, they're both coming out this year. The new Austrian Death Machine comes out on Friday, the 23rd, and then the As I Lay Dying record comes out sometime later this year.
Was it fun to work on this record? Because this to me seems like a little bit more lighthearted, if you will, when you compare to some of the other stuff that you work on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the whole idea behind Austrian Death Machine as a whole is that everybody has different aspects to their personality. You've got like the person, say you have a friend who's just a really deep philosophical thinker, and that's awesome. But if that dude is like that all the time, I mean, that's exhausting, right? You know what I mean? It's like, come on, can we just like enjoy dinner for a second? You know what I mean? And so then I have that other side of me that just wants to be goofy sometimes, and I have to have an outlet for both to keep myself balanced.
In one of the songs, Arnold wants to go a little bit more brutal. Is this the most brutal of all four records?
I think it is as a whole. What's funny is the drummer that I was working with on this record and will be working with going forward. His name's Brandon Short, and he would actually write me back after I'd write a song, and I always kind of program the initial version of how I hear the drums, right? And he would say like, "Hey, I want to play something crazier," because he's a very technical. He's like a speed drummer, right? And so he actually sort of came up with that concept. Was like, hey, like the way that I had written that song initially wasn't challenging enough for him. And I said, dude, if you want to write it crazier, like make it crazier, and then we'll have Arnold talk about it. So
I love it. I have to ask you this because I thought having the Arnold pieces within the songs not only give great life and great meaning to what the song is about, like the context of the song, but it also helps build a sense of sequence between the tracks and the overall concept of the album. If you think of the album as a concept, do you look at the Arnold pieces a little bit like that, adding a little bit of a fun, but at the same time helping bridge tracks a little bit better?
yeah, I think and the guy that did the voiceover for all the Arnold parts on this record, I had just newly started working with them. So looking back, it's like, man, actually, I probably could have included a little bit more, but our working relationship was so new, and then I had the deadlines coming up. And so with that said, I look forward to having him do more. And actually, when we do our live set, we're preparing for this. Maybe not doesn't apply to like where you're living or even where I live for that matter. But we're doing our first ever European tour in May, and I'm having him do all this extra stuff to like you know have all these skits between songs and just make it fun. To remind people that like it's okay to love really intense, brutal music, but still smile.
I'm assuming you guys are playing Austria.
Of course, yeah, yeah. We have a date booked for Vienna. They say it different. Like it's like well, they spell it Vienne, but Vienna, Austria for us over here, English speaking countries.
Are you excited about those shows? Because I think those will have a little bit of extra juice, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the funny part is the sense of humor for particularly Austrians and Germans is like sometimes they tell jokes and they keep such a straight face that you're like, wait a minute, like, was that a joke or not? Right. And you just don't know. And so I think part of the fun will be for me is like telling a joke and not understanding if it went over well or not, and just having to have that personal confidence that like I'm here to have fun.
uh, Having the burden to carry the load when it comes to Austrian Death Machine, you're the main creative mind behind the project. Does that add extra stress for you? Does that add, extra headaches, if you will?
Well, yeah, I think speaking of the delays from triple brutal to quad brutal, 10-year delay. And part of that is that at some point when you're doing something entirely by yourself. And I will never say I did everything entirely by myself, but in terms of the bulk of it, eventually you get to a place where it's like, man, like I'm just sort of like running out of motivation here, and having the new guys come along and be like, hey, you know what? Like, not only we're going to help you finish this record, but like, when you want to go out and do some shows, then you'll have an official band at this point. And it got me excited again. And they're a big part of the timing of doing Quad Brutal.
Was it interesting having Danny on the record working with you on some of these songs? How was that partnership?
Yeah, so the quick history on that is that she never planned on being like a metal singer. She just loves metal. She's way more metal than I am, as an example, right? If I was like, sometimes when I go take a shower, as an example, I'll put on like more relaxing music, right, or something like that, and she'll be like, "What is this crap?" You know what I mean? She's like one of those kind of people, right? You know what I mean? So, she's super metal, always loved metal, but like we were recording No Pain, No Gain, and I needed to just lay down some scratch vocals, test the microphone, make sure everything the levels were working, my compressors were set well, all that kind of stuff. And everybody was just kind of having a shy day. And I'm the one sitting behind the desk, actually manning the equipment. And so I was just like, well, I need somebody else to do this for me. And Danny's like, fine, if none of you guys will do it, let me do it. And she just sang a verse and the gang vocal parts just as like a place marker. And all of us looked at each other like what just happened? That was nuts. Like that was seriously so good. And so then after No Pain No Gain was not written for her, so I then talked to her afterwards and said, listen, like this kind of sounds crazy, but if I write some songs that are right up your alley, what you personally like, do you want to do some with me? And she was hesitant at first, because she, like everybody first getting something, they have like that self-doubt and all that, and I was like, no, trust me, you're good. Like I've been producing other bands for like 20 years. Like I know what raw talent sounds like. You should do this. And she eventually got comfortable with the idea, and I wrote songs with her in mind, which made it even better for her.
Does this open doors for you in terms of future collaborations that you guys could work out together?
I mean, I hope so. I'm trying to like not announce anything too early, but I'll say this, like her and I have been working on music. When I say that, I mean I write the music and then write it with her in mind, knowing what she is good at and and her like stylistic preferences. So I've written a bunch of stuff for her, and I can honestly say that for whatever reason, when I pick up a guitar and I think of writing songs for her, I get more inspired than I've been in a lot of years. So it's some of the best. I wouldn't say like I'm not the craziest shredder in the world, but in terms of just energy behind the riffs and everything, it's some of the best guitar work I've written. And I'm excited for that. I just don't have like a debut day, because with everybody's debut, they don't want to release it until it makes the right statement, right? You only get one debut.
Yeah, you only get one first impression.
Yep.
Did you use her as also a sounding board? Because when you're working on this, it's very easy to get lost in the weeds and overthink certain aspects of the songs. Do you rely on those around you, like her, as a sounding board when you have difficult decisions to make?
Yeah, for sure. Well, especially because with Austrian Death Machine, it's fitting because she doesn't really like for instance, she loves As Dying. She As Dying is one of her favorite bands in some senses, but she loves the heavy half of our catalog, right? And As Dying has, of course, the more melodic half as well. And so then when it comes to Austrian Death Machine, it's like, well, she's that standard. Like, well, if it's not heavy enough and it's not thrashy enough and it's not aggressive enough, then she's gonna tell me. And I wrote like 20 demos and kept the 10 that were um, I felt like the most energetic, and that was largely with her feedback.
You have Craig Goliath and Rob Bailey on the record, and you had it also in the video. Uh, what are they better at, bodybuilding or singing?
Well, I mean, that's well, in the case of Craig, I mean, he's made an incredible career and makes a very comfortable, maybe even slightly extravagant living from bodybuilding. So I don't think that I could say that music is ever going to bring him that kind of income. He just did it solely as an outlet of what he's been passionate about. He sang in like a metalcore band back in like 2001, 2002, somewhere like way back in the day. And of course, they just never went anywhere. So he's been a fan of the genre forever, and it's good for him to finally have an outlet where it's like, hey, like this is another aspect of his personality that the world just didn't know about.
When you think about the band and the music that you guys create, is also your love affair for bodybuilding a huge part of it? Because I can imagine you can be a skinny dude or like a fat dude like me, and put some some songs like these together. It just seem like completely like one thing doesn't match the other. So you know what I'm saying? So does that play a role for you?
Well, like not all of us in the band are in perfect shape, so I don't think like being into fitness means that you just magically, become like a physique model or something like that. Um, in the case of like creating Austrian Death Machine, interestingly enough, like you brought up Rob Bailey as an example, he's in the fitness industry, and a friend of mine, and the reason that we did a song together is entirely because of his friendship, not because he's in the fitness industry and they just coincidentally crossed over, right? Rob's like a great example of a dude who really looks the part. When you see him visually and then you hear his music, it's like, oh, like he looks like to some degree what his music sounds like, you know what I mean? Very motivational, like big imposing, like, 6'4" individual. And so but yeah, the crossover to me is there's not like this criteria of fitness or anything. I just think those two communities have a lot more in common than we ever would admit. When I was growing up, like you could either be a jock or a musician, and you couldn't be both. And I'm not like by any means a jock, but I grew up playing sports, and I felt like it was always weird to like draw that line.
You obviously are a guy that hits the gym on a regular basis. I can tell. Like I said, unlike me, I drive by the gym, but I don't stop at the gym. I continue driving. Now,
Just absorb the energy, you know?
when you stop at the gym, do you listen to Austrian Death Machine to get in the mood, or do you have like some favorite bands that you love listening to when you're working out?
Yeah, well, I when I'm recording Austrian Death Machine, or anything for that matter, a lot of my time of like listening back and getting perspectives while I'm at the gym, just having those songs play in my headphones and just thinking, how does this instinctually feel to me when I'm not analyzing it in the studio, right? So during the creation of the record, I listen to it a lot. In terms of what I listen to, if it's not my own demos that I'm working through, I do listen to like this genre as a whole. Like the sound of As I Dying and Austrian Death Machine is, I know they're both a little different, but like that high energy, just it feels like appropriate for a workout, and that's what I listen to at the gym if it's not my own band. And sometimes, I'll go to like farther extremes and listen to something on the super extreme like speed death metal part end of the spectrum, and sometimes I'll listen to like simpler groove oriented metal like Pantera or something like that. But just in general, like heavy stuff really helps me stay motivated.
Going back to the creation of the band, when you got this project going, when you got the band going, what was the inspiration? Were you a fan of Arnold, or you just like the way people made fun of his voice, and that kind of inspire you to create something along those lines?
No, well, all of the above, because I'm a fan of Arnold stuff. Like my favorite movie of his is was especially when I was that age was when Total Recall came out. It was like the first time I had seen as a kid had seen a movie that like philosophically made me think like what is reality and what's not and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's actually a really well done movie from a writer's perspective. And then Terminator 2 to me was the pinnacle of 90s action. I don't think there's a better 90s action movie than Terminator 2. I still think bizarrely it holds up to this day because we're talking about technology to create those special effects that's 30 years old at this point, and it's still the movie still holds up. So I loved those growing up as a kid. So it's the nostalgia that first came in, and then of course like doing the accent or failing at it or whatever you call it, is just fun. Like people in regular society like will have these drunken moments where they just decide to speak like Arnold anyways. So
My son, not that he's drunk, but he does it. He does it all the time. I find it hilarious. I can't pull it off. I applaud those that can because they make my life better. I really enjoy it. I discovered Arnold. I think the first movie I watched was Conan the Barbarian. It was just Conan. I think was just Conan, and then was Commando. And I absolutely love those two movies. I think those are like some of the best movies he's ever done. At least for me, has that nostalgia aspect to it. If you could be in a movie with Arnold, creating a sequel to one of his greatest movies of all time, what movie would you pick?
hmm, I mean, speaking of Total Recall, I always wonder when that movie's over. I still to this day, you always wonder like, was this all part of the implant in his head, or was it reality and he was fighting against like an international conspiracy? And the movie sort of ends in a way that like leads you to believe that it's possible that it's everything that was implanted in his head because it's to the T exactly what he was interested in. And I think a sequel to that, it could be like a letdown because it could be like spoiling the great philosophical outlook on it, but it was just such a cool set and what life is like in the aftermath of that would be very interesting.
After your European tour, are you planning anything in North America as far as Austrian Death Machine is concerned?
Yeah, so I actually was going to do some North American dates before Europe originally, but the band that I was trying to package with, it didn't really work out in their schedule, and I figured, well, I'd rather wait for the right timing. So I'm still kind of ironing that out, but I'll do some North American Austrian Death Machine stuff this year for sure.
Does it surprise you the fan love that this band has? Like, there's so much support. People really enjoy the themes. They enjoy the lyrics. They enjoy the sound. Does that come to you as a shock at all?
Well, it's funny because when I did the first record, I just wanted to do something fun, and I didn't really realize like kind of the cult following that would occur. And then as I've become like aware of that, it's like, okay, well now it's like something that I'm getting a little bit more used to. So I know that there's a fan base out there for it. Um, and I think what it really comes down to in the end is that even if the first couple records in particular were written very quickly and sort of just like as like a let's not overthink this, let's just have fun. It actually ended up being sonically, like Quad Brutal being a good example. It's sonically on par with, or maybe better than many of our peers, and maybe I don't know if I sound arrogant saying this, but the fact that it's like sonically, a high quality, interesting, brutal record, even if you took any sense of comedy out of it and then you add the comedy on top of it, makes sense to me why there would be like a a following. Because like me as a musician, if I wasn't in this band and I heard something like this, I would be like, dang, like the metal industry needs something like that.
I think it's a great combination. There's definitely a Venn diagram that meets somewhere there. So I
Yeah.
really enjoy it from that standpoint. I get the feeling that the band kind of started as a palate cleanser for you to kind of give you a break from everything else, but now it's starting to become a little bit more serious, or at least you look at it from a little bit more of a serious perspective. Do you see it that way? Is that a right take?
I just think more doors have opened up. Like the idea of doing Austrian Death Machine tours originally was just never, maybe a special event here and there, but the idea of doing a tour wasn't really on my radar. And now, I'm releasing an album with in a traditional sense with the announcing a European tour on the couple days before the album comes out, stuff like that. So the doors have opened up. The guys are there with me in terms of the performers. Like I actually have a band with me, which is I've had guys, people that have helped me along the way, and so I give them a ton of credit. But I just mean in terms of like an official, reliable, steady lineup. I have that, and so I just want to kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, I have one last question for you. You mentioned earlier that, you have a philosophical friend, but you also want to be able to have a good time and be that different kind of a person. This band showcases a different side of you. Is that a side of you that you feel like sometimes doesn't get enough attention, that people maybe look at you because of your physique, the way you look, as I lay dying, what you've done with the band, and they see you maybe more as a serious person, and you need to have this to showcase, hey, I like jokes too.
Yeah, it is funny because I think um the best example I can think of is when somebody comes to see us at an As Dying concert, right? And then if they stick around or they're hanging by the bus like on our way back and they end up meeting me and talking with me for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, however long it is, they're always like, oh wow, like you're a lot different in person than I thought you'd be, because I think people build up this idea in their head of like, this guy's a bigger person, 250 pound previously incarcerated individual, and he's up on stage and he's, throwing punches at the air and all this stuff that's like, there's not a lot of like light-hearted moments in an As I Dying set because it's very passionate and energy fueled, and then they meet me and it's like, oh, this guy's really just calm and smiles a lot, and so it's good. It's a good way for me to make sure that my personality is represented publicly as well.
Yeah, at both spectrums. Tim, thank you a lot. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. The album Quad Brutal comes out February 23rd on Napalm Records. Go check it out. Thank you once again for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. All right, have a good dinner with the fam.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Take care. All the best.
All right, you too. Bye.